This upcoming quarterback class is not good, but Jalen Milroe is the one that you need to target. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also read me over at the 33rd Team, where there's mock draft out today. Go check that out. And joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. You've seen her at Pro Football Focus and a million other websites. Go follow all of her work. On today's show, we're talking about Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, who, Kate, and I want to start with this, was invited to the NFL draft and accepted his invitation. The NFL has really cracked down on the number of players they're inviting to the draft, which means that Milroe will be in attendance on Thursday night. Do you see him as a first-round caliber quarterback?
No, not at this moment in time.
No.
Does he have the physical gifts and traits that you might like for a first-round quarterback? Absolutely. But he's still a work in progress as a passer in a very big way. But it is kind of fascinating to see the NFL extend this invitation to him, because I think the general consensus is round 2, round 3 on Jalen Milroe. So to have the league come out and give him an invite is a little jarring. Let's talk about Jalen Milroe, the basics, right? 22 years old, senior out of Alabama, former 4-star recruit, 6'2", 217 pounds. He's got smaller hands, but where he wins is not in his ability as a passer. It is in his mobility and his upside as a runner, because, man, once he gets going, he's probably gone.
So can we talk about the hand size really quickly? Because
Let's
on the
talk about
graphic,
the hand size.
basically 9.5-inch hands. At the Senior Bowl, they were 8 3/4 inches. So either somebody got the measurement wrong at one of these places, and we're starting to see more information that maybe the combine had some pretty inept measuring.
And to be clear, the 9 3/8 measurements did come at the NFL combine. So
yes. I don't know
yeah.
what's going on. Maybe I'm not joking when I say that some of these quarterbacks have gone to like hand specialists where they practice stretching your hand. If you're watching with us on YouTube, I'm going to try to explain to you what's happening. So they measure your hands from your thumb to your pinky, right? That's how they measure the size of your hand. So yeah, there you go, Kate. We'll have to measure your hands to see what size they are. But what some of these specialists have done is they've been working on the ligaments right here to help you stretch your pinky and your thumb out, so that when you get measured, it's actually a little bit longer. This has been a new trend in the NFL where these quarterbacks are working on the stretching of their ligaments so they have bigger hand size. I have no idea what this means for Jalen Milroe, but I just thought it was worth pointing it out.
And so here's the thing about the hand size too. So like practically, what does it matter for a quarterback? It is a really big deal for a quarterback, because what does hand size correlate with in a big way? Ball security.
Yes.
And let's just be real. The ball security has been an issue with Jalen Milroe. First, let's talk about the strengths. Marcus, you quoted, I'm just going to quote you here, maybe the best running quarterback of all time. Elaborate on that for us.
He has 32 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. And we've had some really good rushing quarterbacks, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that are bigger, like Cam Newton. Lamar Jackson was taller. I don't think I've seen a quarterback with his combination of size and speed. In my notes, Kate, I wrote, if he were only a running back prospect, Bill Poling would love this, by the way. If he were only a running back prospect in this class, he would be probably worth a 3rd or 4th round pick, because he's that special of a runner. We're talking about somebody who at his pro day ran a 4.40 40-yard dash at 217 pounds. Like, that is blazing. Plus, he's got good vision. He is an amazing short yardage runner. Think about Jalen Hurts as a runner, right? Jalen Hurts is this kind of shorter, squattier runner, but he's not running a 4.4. I bet you Jalen Hurts barely runs a 4.75 now. He is going to be a weapon right away in the NFL as a runner.
Absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned the uniqueness of the size and speed. Like the way that he moves sometimes, like he can remind you almost of a Lamar Jackson, the way he can be kind of slippery, except he's got this big, bulkier frame, which that just tells you kind of how unique he is as a runner and the way that he's able to create with his legs.
And you see him breaking like arm tackles. Like he's got a bigger lower body.
Yep.
So like, these defensive backs and linebackers that just try to stick an arm out and trip them. It doesn't happen very often. We just don't get very many quarterbacks, Kate, that are like this, that are that dynamic in the open field.
And then why isn't he a running back in this draft? Well, because he has a well above average arm. He's got great arm strength. Now, like we'll counter that with the fact that not always the most accurate arm, but when we're talking about like pure tools, he's got a great arm.
Yeah, he's got a great arm. In my notes, I wrote rocket arm. The ball explodes off of his hands. And on top of that, he's got a really quick release, which helps. So if you got a quick release and you can throw the ball a mile, man, you can go a long way with just that. Now, the knock on Milroe is the accuracy is all over the place. And we saw him regress as a passer from 2023 to 2024. I think in 2024, they tried to use some more pro style elements to his game. And you just didn't see that. You didn't see the accuracy get better. I don't think he does a good job of reading the intermediate parts of the field. I think he really struggles because he's not that tall. He's under 6'2". He struggles to throw over the middle of the field. And Kate, we talked about this in the positives. Like he's at his best when he can throw the moon balls down the sideline. He throws with good arc. He's got the arm strength. So there is some like early career Russell Wilson vibes to his game. He's just nowhere near as accurate in the rest of the field or over the rest of the field.
For sure. And we mentioned the hand size, 24 fumbles in 2 years. Now, I will say, just because of the nature of rushing quarterbacks, we do tend to see rushing quarterbacks have more fumbles. They're putting the ball at greater risk when they are taking the open field every single time. That can, like, there's no doubt that rushing quarterbacks fumble more often than traditional pocket passers. Usually, the small hands don't help. So, what does that mean for Jalen Milroe in general as a prospect? It means there's a lot of great physical tools there that could make him a really exciting player at the next level, but there's a lot to hammer out here. Per PFF, a 53.1% accurate throw rate in 2024. That ranked as the 6th lowest among the 53 quarterbacks in the Power 5 with 300 or more attempts. 23.9% uncatchable inaccurate pass rate. That was the 14th highest among those 53 quarterbacks. So like when we're talking about the accuracy on the moon balls, that's fantastic, right? But I do think that sometimes there are moments where I don't necessarily know that, Milroe knows how to always dial back that arm strength. And sometimes that can suffer because the accuracy can suffer because of that. He doesn't necessarily have a ton of touch. And I think that's something that he needs to work on at the next level, which might improve his accuracy moving forward.
Yeah. And I think we tend to see some of these quarterbacks that have smaller hands struggle with accuracy because they're not able to put the ball where they want to. They don't have the same grip around the football. And my concern would be if Jalen Milroe goes to one of these colder weather cities and teams, maybe you see the accuracy issues become an even bigger problem. But Kate, the rushing upside is so good. So last year in 2024, we'll get to the stats here in a second, but he had 726 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns. However, remember in college football that your sack yardage counts towards your rushing yards. And he had 23 sacks last year, and a couple of them were big-time sacks. You remove the sack yards, and we're talking about somebody who has like 900 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns. It's unbelievable how good he is as a runner, and that's why we're having the conversation we are about him right now.
Absolutely. And we know what rushing does for that fantasy upside. So I think we have a lot more to talk about here when it comes to Jalen Milroe.
Let's get into some of the advanced analytics. And as you would expect, the passing numbers aren't great, but just how bad are they? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching up on a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup, but finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front, and there's no surprise fees at checkout. Here's why I love using Game Time. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. Plus, with the seat views before you buy, there's no surprise fees. You know exactly what your seats are going to look like, and they have the lowest price guarantee, so you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Okay, let's dive into the advanced analytics with Jalen Milroe. What do we got?
Well, I want to first start just with like some of the straight up stats here, because we do have a decent sample size. He played 2 years as a starter at Alabama. Did take a big step back in 2024. You mentioned that there was, a pro style offense, and he was playing more in a pro style offense in the 2024 season. And that was kind of reflected. His struggles were well reflected in that. Saw a regression in terms of his yards per attempt, yards per completion, saw an increase in his interception rate, decrease in his touchdown percentage. But where he wins is, of course, in that rushing ability. Over 1,200 rushing yards, 32 rushing touchdowns between the 2023 and 2024 campaigns. That's going to tell you all you need to know about Jalen Milroe and his upside, of course, for fantasy. For the advanced metrics, this is where things get a little tricky. Now, we've talked about several quarterbacks here in this class already. We've talked about Jackson Dart. We've talked about Shedeur Sanders. We've talked about Cam Ward. Jalen Milroe's advanced passing metrics pale in comparison to every single one of them. 39th percentile clean pocket grade per PFF. And let's not forget, that is a concerning stat, because the best measure you can make of a quarterback's like decision making, accuracy, etc., that assessment is most accurately made from a clean pocket when they do not have pressure, when they are able to read the field as they would in any given play. 39th percentile, 42nd percentile first and second down grade, 41st percentile no play action grade, 77th percentile on throws at or beyond the sticks, and 32nd percentile sack rate. I'm going to be honest, Marcus, the advanced metrics for Jalen Milroe are oof.
They're not great, admittedly. Now, the 2023 metrics are better across the board, but I will say all of the advanced numbers we're looking at right now are passing numbers. He was much better as a runner in 2024 than he was in 2023. And again, I know that doesn't show up. Everybody on social media is 16 touchdowns. That's 16 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. That's rough. But they fail to mention that he also rushed for 20 touchdowns, right?
Yep.
It's a little bit like Jalen Hurts when we talk about Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. You see the passing numbers, and it's like 18 passing touchdowns. And then, oh yeah, by the way, he's got 19 rushing touchdowns. We even do some of the same for Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen will have some of these years where it's, 31 passing touchdowns, and that just kind of pales in comparison to like a Joe Burrow. And then we got to remember, oh yeah, there's also 16 rushing touchdowns here that we need to account for. So the passing stuff is below average for what we want from a starting NFL quarterback. However, the rushing upside and the rushing talent makes him somebody where if he gets into the game, you can design and build an offense. And Kate, I'm going to use this as a comp. We're going to get to comps later. Think about someone like Snoop Huntley, who played for the Ravens for a couple of years, played for the Dolphins this year. Milroe is way better player than what Snoop Huntley is. But Snoop Huntley was able to win a lot of games and make it to a Pro Bowl because he was such a good runner, right? I think Milroe in the right offense can do at least something similar.
Now, let's talk about fit, because I do think that's probably, the most intriguing part. I don't think any of us are looking at Jalen Milroe as a guy that we expect to see the field as a intended starter in 2025.
No, probably not.
But I do think that in the right circumstance, in the right situation, with the right coaching staff, there could be something there down the line that could be conducive to some dynasty value long term. So where are some potential landing spots that you're looking and saying, okay, I think this is a coaching staff that can develop Milroe as a passer? Who would you trust? Jalen Milroe, because again, physical tools, hand size out of the question, but like from a development standpoint, where would you like to see Milroe go? Because it's not even a team, it's kind of nice. You don't need a team that needs a quarterback right now. Jalen Milroe could be kind of a little bit of a luxury pick, almost like Jalen Hurts was in the second round. And, that pick kind of looked like a surprise a little bit, I think, because they'd paid Carson Wentz. Then Jalen Hurts comes in. He was, a little bit more raw, needed a little bit more time. And then look at Jalen Hurts coming off his Super Bowl win.
I've got two spots that I would like to see him go. The first is the Las Vegas Raiders, because they just signed Geno Smith to an extension. He's obviously going to be the quarterback there for the next year or two. And I think Chip Kelly's offense would really benefit and suit Milroe well, right? It's a run-heavy offense that uses a lot of RPOs, a lot of read options. And I think that's somewhere where he could go. And generally, the Chip Kelly offense is a 1 or 2 read option or offense. And I think with like Brock Bowers, okay, you're either giving it to the running back, you're taking it, or you're throwing it to Brock Bowers, running towards the sideline. I think that's a good offense for him to kind of grow up in. So I think if the Raiders decide to take, let's say, like Armand Membu, the right tackle at 6, and they want to grab Milroe to develop behind Geno Smith, Kate, I think that makes a lot of sense. And we also talked about like, hey, let's try to get him away from a cold weather city because, maybe the hand size is an issue. But I think, playing in Las Vegas in a dome 8-9 times a year, and then whatever other nice games you're going to play in, I don't think that's a bad landing spot.
Definitely not a bad landing spot. And definitely intriguing, because I do think we're seeing a new leaf turnover in the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll see how this pans out long term, but with Tom Brady's involvement, with Pete Carroll, like this could be an interesting ecosystem that I feel like we've just kind of had the Raiders off our fantasy boards for a little bit. But I do think this could be a moment where we can buy in a little bit, buy low, give us your second spot.
So think about what we said for strengths back at the beginning. Again, if you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see he's an outstanding runner with a well above average arm and very accurate on moonballs. Kate, is there a team out there that has 2 receivers on the outside that love to run deep and love to catch moonballs? Do you know of any certain team like that? Maybe in the AFC North?
Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah. So I actually think he's a good fit in Arthur Smith's offense. We saw last year in the 6 games that Justin Fields played, Fields actually played pretty well. And it's from everything that's come out, it certainly sounds like it wasn't Arthur Smith's choice to go from Fields to Russell Wilson. We've seen Arthur Smith have a lot of success with Marcus Mariota, with Ryan Tannehill, and then obviously the little bit we saw from Justin Fields. I think Milroe, in an offense that wants to basically be layups and 3-pointers, right, running the ball and taking moonball shots down the field, I think that's not a bad situation for him either.
Not a bad situation. I do think what is also intriguing, you mentioned Justin Fields and the success he had in this offense. Justin Fields was really clean with the football in 2024. Yeah. And that, obviously Again, hand size being a factor for Jalen Milroe. We mentioned that cold weather might be a complicating factor. Arthur Smith's offense might be one that helps clean up some of those issues and, you know, masks them just a
Yep.
little bit. But I mean, Arthur Smith, for as much flack as we want to give him, I do think he's done a lot to kind of maximize the upside for the rushing upside of
Sure.
his quarterbacks. Like you mentioned, Marcus Mariota, good runner. Ryan Tannehill, we saw some of his best rushing production
Yep.
under Arthur Smith. He's done a lot to, I think, make these good rushing quarterbacks great. Imagine what he could do with a great rushing quarterback at the next level.
All right, let's talk about Jalen Milroe's current dynasty value and some player comps. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about Jalen Milroe's dynasty value. But one of the things I always like to bother you with is some comps. Did you have a comp when you watched Milroe?
I don't.
Okay,
I'm not
that's
great
fine.
at comps.
That's
That's
all right.
why. That's
I
why
always
we
want
have
to give
you,
you the
Marcus.
floor. That's
Yeah.
fine.
No. Let's hear
So,
your comp for Jalen Milroe.
I think the most likely comp to me is like Tyrod Taylor, early in his career was a backup and actually was a pretty quality backup for a long time. When he finally got a chance to start in Buffalo, was pretty good, and he led Buffalo to the playoffs. But Tyrod Taylor, 6'1", 217, ran a 4.47 at the NFL Combine. Great athlete. And kind of as he played in the NFL, got more and more accurate, but never became somebody who is a top 20, 25 quarterback, but always a high-level backup. I think that's the most likely case for Milroe, where even if he never gets better as a passer, he's still going to be a weapon as a backup because of how dynamic he is. But I do think there is some Jalen Hurts to his game where, man, Jalen Hurts at Alabama, those couple of years that he was starting, was not a good passer at all. He went to Oklahoma's offense playing under Lincoln Riley, put up big numbers with CeeDee Lamb as his receiver, goes to the Eagles as a backup as a rookie, and then as his first couple of years starting, really, really inaccurate, but was able to do so much with his legs that he was able to stay on the field. I think that's the upside here, which is why I am so intrigued by him in dynasty leagues, Kate, because he is going to be so valuable for us whenever he's playing. And I can't say the same about Tyler Shuck and Jackson Dart and maybe even Shedeur Sanders.
I mean, when the question is upside, right? Which I think that's what we're talking about with Jalen Milroe for fantasy specifically, because I don't think anybody's really looking at Jalen Milroe right now and saying he's got a ton of upside as a passer. But for fantasy, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? That's not really what we're looking at. But what gives him such a high upside in fantasy specifically is that edge that rushing quarterbacks get because of the scoring mismatch between rushing yards and passing yards. Now, looking at his dynasty value right now, he's currently ranked in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP over at Dynasty League Football as the rookie QB4 in this class. That's behind Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. Then there's Jalen Milroe. So how does that feel to you? Because again, when we're looking at like
here's the reason why, Kate. I think Shedeur is going to get drafted in the first round. I think Dart's either going to go late first round, early second round. Probably not going to start in year one. The thing I keep coming back to is, even if Sanders and Dart are full-time starters, I just don't know if you're ever going to feel confident to start them in your, obviously in your one QB leagues, but even in your super flex leagues, it feels like a very unappealing option. Yeah. Whereas for Dart, if Dart starts, if Milroe starts, we're talking about somebody who has legit top 10 upside, because if he gets you 70 rushing yards and a touchdown, that's all you need for him to be fantasy relevant that week. So I would take Milroe as my QB3. And I would much rather wait on Milroe than to draft Shedeur Sanders at the top of round 2 or wherever you have to go get him.
Yeah, looking at right now, super flex rookie mock drafts, Shedeur Sanders going as the 7th player off the board.
Way too high.
Cam Ward, QB1, going 3rd overall behind Ashton Genty, Amari, and Hampton. I think that feels fair. Shedeur Sanders, though, from a passing standpoint, like we know he's accurate, but we also know he takes too many sacks. We also know he doesn't run. What is the upside there for Shedeur Sanders at pick number 7 when
Nothing.
I can wait on Jalen Milroe till the 2nd round, grab him? Right now, ADP has him as the 17th player off the board, and that's behind wide receiver Trey Harris, Matthew Golden, who, again, I get there's a lot of buzz there, but there's still a lot of questions for me. Like that
here's my
kind of
thing.
value in a super flex league feels really nice.
I want to win my dynasty leagues. I don't really care if I get 6th or 8th or 10th. It just really doesn't matter. So for me, like if I had the 7th pick, that's where I'm targeting Travis Hunter, who we talked about in an episode 2 weeks ago. I think Travis Hunter is he's on the same level as prospect as Malik Neighbors as a receiver. And then Jalen Milroe, the same thing. Is there a chance that neither of those guys are contributing for me in year 1? Sure. But if one of them hits, now we're talking about a real difference maker and somebody that can actually help you win playoff games in fantasy leagues. I don't love Milroe as a prospect. I don't love him to maybe be a long-term starter, but I understand what this could potentially mean for us dynasty players.
I like that you said you want to win your dynasty leagues. And I do think that, shooting for this kind of upside, that's the kind of move you're looking for.
Cool.
We'll see what kind of draft capital Jalen Milroe gets. We'll see what kind of landing spot he gets. Like, I don't want him to go to a bad organization, right? Where he's not going to have maybe the resources he needs to develop as a passer. But I do think if he hits the field, the sentence that comes to mind for Jalen Milroe here is, I'm here for a good time, not for a long time. And that's the view that I have for Jalen Milroe and Dynasty. Because I think when he's on the field, if he gets there, we're going to have a good time.
Kate, I don't know if it's all that different from Justin Fields, right? Like Justin Fields has not been a top 25 quarterback really at any point of his career, but he's a must start every single time he's starting a game, right? Yep. And I'm hoping Milroe is a better player than Justin Fields in the NFL, but even if he's only Justin Fields, that's still incredibly valuable to us. For sure. That is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, everydayers, we're going to talk about a player I did not want to like at all when I first turned on the tape. I was grumpy. I didn't like it. I don't like the style of player. But Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State, starting to grow on me a little bit. We'll talk about him on Friday. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.